All right, and we're here on a special Couch Coach Live Super Week edition. We're going to kick off this year's Super Week. Definitely huge shout out to the good folks at Goalie. Head over to goalie.com. Use our promo code Couch Coach and get yourself 10% off. So we're going to talk. We got a special guest today from the AFC Champion Cincinnati Bengals to kick off Super Week. We got our guy, Taylor Cornell from the Who They Den podcast. Taylor. We got Taylor coming in. What's going on, Taylor?
How's it going, man? I'm excited.
Yes, indeed. Taylor, man, we are here once again. The Cincinnati Bengals are in the Super Bowl. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of actually the before we get into the Super Bowl and what have you, just talk about this journey to get here to 56.
I mean, it's been surreal. I've never experienced this in my life. So I've been a Bengals fan my entire life for 30 years now. So I mainly knew failures and disappointments. And even when the team was kind of good with the Carson Palmer years, we still never won playoff games. Andy Dalton didn't win playoff games. So even our success was a little bit jaded. We never experienced a playoff win. And then now in the last 3 weeks, just an absolute whirlwind of 3 playoff wins. I've been lucky enough to be at all 3 of them. So it's just like soaking it all in. And I don't know how to describe my feelings, because maybe this is how every fan feels every year. Maybe Patriots fans felt this every single year. I kind of doubt it. But it's just this, you kind of just, I can't believe it. And everything, I see with graphics that have the Super Bowl logo next to the Bengals logo, it's like, oh yeah, we're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And like you said, what a hell of a ride. Like, it's to a point, like you said, we talked about it before we went on air, where, 3 weeks ago, you were just sending your first playoff text.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're in the Super Bowl. And like you said, and it's, it's one of those things where you look at a fan base that you're really rooting for, a fan base like this that's really has had, failures in the past. And now, in just one swoop, have made it to the big game. So yes, indeed, it's definitely, I know it's a hell of a ride for you.
I think Bengals fans, even the most optimistic, felt like next year might be that year we make a playoff push, maybe make a run in the playoffs. This year was, let's get, a healthy Joe Burrow for an entire season and see what we got with Jamar Chase and these weapons. And even you say, like, we started 5-2 and that felt pretty good, but then we went through a 2-game losing streak, including to the Jets and a shellacking to the Browns, and sitting at 5-4, it felt like, okay, like if we can get to 500 and finish the season 500, I think most of us will be pretty happy. And just the way things took off the last month, 6 weeks or whatever it's been here, has been absolutely amazing to root for every single week.
Yeah. So, and we definitely got to talk about your opponent, the Los Angeles Rams, who will be a de facto home game in a sense. So, when you're looking at the Rams, as far as your opponents, what do you see as their weaknesses that potentially Cincinnati could take full advantage of?
I think maybe the biggest weakness would be, and it's something the Bengals have really needed all season long, is forcing turnovers. When they force turnovers, they win games. And Matthew Stafford has been, I don't want to say necessarily mistake prone, but he has made his fair share of mistakes throughout the season, regular season and playoffs. And I know he's been better the last 3 games in the playoffs, so I don't want to ignore that. But when you look at the totality of his season, he was tied for 6th in the league, and this is according to PFF, in turnover-worthy passes. So whether they were intercepted or not, they were plays that could have been intercepted. Some of them probably were, some of them dropped, whatever it may be. When he's pressured, tied for 6th, around guys like Big Ben and Tua and Sam Darnold, like guys that definitely are not anywhere near a Super Bowl right now. Stafford had his highest interception percentage since his rookie season. I think the way that the Bengals defense is playing right now, extremely opportunistic, really at every level. We had a defensive lineman get an interception last week. We've got Logan Wilson getting interceptions and Jermaine Pratt at the linebacker level. And then the secondary, Jesse Bates is playing extremely well. Von Bell, those guys back there. So I think we have a very opportunistic defense that has a chance to turn over Matthew Stafford at least once, maybe twice, and that could be a huge difference in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things definitely I can look at as a potential benefit for you guys. So any individual matchups that you're looking forward to in this matchup?
Man, I'm curious as to how the Rams plan on covering the Bengals pass catchers. Obviously, we know we have Jamar Chase, who's setting rookie records and really set the league on fire for much of the season. But a lot of fans that don't watch the Bengals, just fans of other teams or NFL fans in general, don't know a lot about T. Higgins, and he flies under the radar a little bit. When in reality, he could be a number one receiver on probably over half the teams in the league. He had an extremely impressive rookie season last year himself, was a little overlooked coming into this year because of the Jamar Chase draft pick. He suffered through, I believe, it was a shoulder injury earlier in the year that kind of slowed him down. Even with that, he was 1,000-yard receiver. We've seen teams that try to double Jamar Chase. I mean, if we look at our Ravens opponent, first Ravens matchup, the Bengals absolutely torched them with Jamar Chase, 200 yards or whatever it was. Like, he just went insane against them. The next matchup, they try to swing more coverage over to Jamar Chase. T. Higgins goes for 200. So it's like, you got to pick your poison. And I know everybody wants to talk about Jalen Ramsey, and he's a talented player, but Jalen Ramsey can't cover all of these receivers. So I'm interested as to whether they're going to have Ramsey on Jamar, and does that open things up for T. Higgins? T was very impressive last week against the Chiefs. Are they going to put Jalen Ramsey on T. Higgins and try to double team Jamar Chase? In which case, that could open things up for Tyler Boyd, who's been kind of a quiet player this year, very consistent third downs, converting over the middle of the field. Plus, we've got CJ Uzomah at tight end, Joe Mixon out of the backfield, who's been very involved over the last 4 to 6 weeks, catching the ball out of the backfield. You can't double team everyone. And so I'm curious as to how these Rams are planning on trying to contain our passing offense.
And also, how's the health for CJ?
Yeah, questionable. I mean, I think it's encouraging. As I was watching the game, I was in Kansas City for that, and seeing him hobble off the field and take a cart, you're just assuming the worst.
Yeah.
And to see them declare it as a MCL sprain or whatever it was, I believe he was back on the rehab field late this week or late last week, working. So the hope is that he gets a couple of practices logged before the Super Bowl. I think we are cautiously optimistic that he is going to play, because he's a unsung hero of our offense, a key cog that nobody talks about outside of Cincinnati, but he's very important to what this offense does.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we talked about some, as far as flying on the radar guys like T. Higgins, also CJ, as far as being an unsung hero. So in this particular matchup with the Rams, do you have any X factors that you see that will pay dividends in this matchup?
Yeah, I think one of them is probably kind of obvious. It's Evan McPherson. Everybody who's watched any of the playoff games this year has seen how important he's been for us, but he really has been used as a weapon in this offense. And it's unfortunate in some ways how much we've had to depend on him, because a lot of times our offense has been stalling out in the red zone and things like that. But it's something to behold to have a kicker that you are comfortable anywhere from the 40-yard line and inward. I feel comfortable we're going to come away with that drive with 3 points. And in a Super Bowl that I don't think many people are predicting a blowout necessarily, 3 points here and there can go a long way towards winning that game. Whether it's a walk-off game winner or not, it could be, as a drive is winding down at the end of the half and he's able to kick a 50-yard or whatever it is. You're going to take points however you can get him in the Super Bowl, and I think he is one to watch. Another one, and you just touched on, was CJ Uzomah. And as I said, I don't think a lot of fans outside of Cincinnati know much about CJ Uzomah, because he's not, if you look at his numbers and the box scores each week, he's not lighting things up necessarily. But Uzomah is Joe Burrow's quick outlet. When he's pressured, especially out of the empty formation, which the Bengals like to go to, CJ Uzomah is the guy that more often than not is benefiting from those really quick passes. And his last 4 games prior to the Kansas City, where he was injured early on, he was averaging 5 for 51. So, nothing outstanding, but those are 5 catches that are probably moving the chains, or taking a second and long, maybe after a sack, into a third and manageable. In his 2 playoff games that he played before Kansas City, he was averaging 6.5 and 67 receiving yards. So half of his catches go for first downs throughout the season. And he has the ability as well to make a splash play. We've seen it a couple times this year. making those huge catches. Even in the first playoff game against the Raiders, he had I believe, a 30-yard reception. And he's able to stretch the field a little bit in the seam. But I think another way that he's impactful is he's not a George Kittle level blocker. I mean, that guy's elite. But when we saw CJ Uzomah go out last week against Kansas City with the injury, our backup tight ends, Drew Sample, Mitchell Wilcox, really struggled. They're not the pass catchers that Uzomah is, but they also really struggled in the run game. The Bengals like to run the wide zone, and so it relies on a lot of ability to block along the edge too. And when your tight ends are getting blown up there at the end of the line, it can really make things difficult in the run game. So I think CJ Uzomah is, again, he's not a guy that's going to win MVP if he plays. He's not a guy that's probably not going to go over 100 yards or set the game on fire. But when he makes catches, they're usually key catches for this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got keys. We got some. What are your some few keys for a Bengals win, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think limiting sacks is an easy one to point to. Everybody knows that the Bengals offensive line is questionable. We struggle, especially since Riley Reif, our starting right tackle, was out for the season with an injury. It's been probably over a month now since that. So we've kind of been struggling in that area. Some of our guys that were overperforming at the beginning of the year, like Quentin Spain, have come back down a little bit to earth. And we've seen sacks and sacks and sacks. And you want to reference sacks? It's the Titans game. 9 sacks against your quarterback in the playoffs on the road, and you still win. Says a lot about this team and a lot about your quarterback. But we've seen Joe Burrow with his ability to navigate pressure. I mean, 40% of his dropbacks last week against the Chiefs were under pressure, according to PFF. Only one of those resulted in a sack, though. You saw him shake off defenders and run for 5 first downs last week. He's scrambling a little bit more, making plays with his legs, but he also can get out of the pocket and make throws on the run. So pressure is one thing. I expect Aaron Donald and those guys to put pressure on Joe Burrow. It's just is it going to be one of those things where Burrow is able to escape that and make something? Because when he's sacked, he's sacked. There's no opportunity to make something out of nothing when you're getting sacked. But, he can handle pressure. He does well with pressure in his face. It's just going to be, can the Bengals offensive line hold on that last half second long enough for Joe to be able to get the ball out? Could be a major difference in this game. I think if Joe's sacked 5 or more times, it's going to be really tough for this offense to get anything going. Anything less than that, I think, is manageable. Burrow's been dealing with it all season long, and it's gotten us this far. So,
yeah, big time. So I got to ask you $1 million question. Your prediction for Super Bowl 56, including the score. What you got?
Well, I mentioned that I think the Rams and Stafford's proneness to turn the ball over could be key. I think the Bengals winning the turnover battle is going to be able to spell victory for Cincinnati. So the Bengals are 12-2 when they're either even or plus in the turnover margin department. One of those 2 losses was when we rested our starters against Cleveland at the end of the year. So really, 12-1. This defense have forced 7 turnovers in 3 playoff games. All of them wins, obviously. I think that we're going to be able to turn over the Rams when they have the ball, 1 or 2 times at least. And I do think it's going to actually be a lower scoring game than people think. I'm seeing, some predictions of a mid-30s type game. And I think 38-35 with these quarterbacks going off would be really exciting and really fun to watch. But the Bengals defense has given up only a little over 20 points per game their last 7 games. And I mean, that's almost half a season sample size. So it's not just over the last couple of games they've gotten hot. You're looking at pretty much over half a season, 28.6 points per game. It's a pretty legit sample size. I think our playmakers on defense, Trey Hendrickson on the defensive line, I mentioned Jesse Bates, those guys are making plays. And I don't think we're going to see a barn burner type of shootout. I think Stafford will have some nerves. There's a lot of pressure on him as well. People aren't necessarily talking about that aspect as much. And it's kind of hard to quantify nerves, right? Like, what's that going to result in? Who knows? But I think there is something to be said about Stafford's now, 12 years into his career, never had really made a run like this before. And now he's in the Super Bowl. And it's like, dude, they traded all these assets to get you onto the team. You've taken to the Super Bowl. But if you don't win it, that's trouble for you. You might not get back here in your career. So I think there's going to be some pressure there. I think the Bengals are going to work that short and intermediate area of the field, those quick passes to try to negate the pass rush. I think this is a game where things are clicking right for Cincinnati in the playoffs. Things have gone our way. We've gotten some favorable calls. We've gotten, like, if you saw the highlight last week of Joe Burrow having Chris Jones on his back and he shakes him off and runs for a first down, it's like, dude, those are sacks 9 out of 10 times, and things are going our way. I have bias. I'm a Bengals fan, but I'm going with Cincinnati in a lower scoring game. Evan McPherson getting a fair share of field goals, 26-23 over the Rams. I'm going to be celebrating a Super Bowl here in Cincinnati, hopefully.
And hopefully you'll be sending out a Super Bowl text.
Absolutely. I haven't decided if I'm throwing a party and celebrating with friends or whether I just want to zone in and watch this by myself, locked in. So I've got about a week to figure that out, how I'm going to actually watch this game.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. I definitely wanted to get your perspective on it too, because especially like with me, my team, I haven't. They haven't won in 30 years. So, like, as far as I've always been, like, okay, it doesn't matter who wins in a sense. It's like there's no pressure. Mm-hmm. But how is just like your mental just going into this week, really?
I mean, the bye week has made it a little more difficult because there's just more anticipation. But I think it was actually a healthy bye week for fans. Players get it healthy. Fans needed a mental break after the last 3 weeks. So it's interesting because I think the Raiders game, there was a lot of pressure on this franchise. Like, hey, you haven't won anything in 31 years or whatever. We got that monkey off our back. I was very nervous about getting that first one out of the way. I felt pretty confident against the Titans, actually. I thought we were going to win that game, even though we were underdogs, and we did. Kansas City, I thought we were going to win, but I was uneasy about it. This one, again, I'm predicting a win, but it's such a tough matchup. I mean, the Rams present so many between their pass rushers and between, Cooper Kupp obviously makes plays and Stafford can make plays. He lit up the Bucks, just last week or whatever. But I think that I'm going to be more nervous in the days leading up to it. Right now, I've had time to collect myself. I got the newspapers here that I framed. If I can get my fingers over there, we're all just enjoying it. We're all buying all the gear for Super Bowl and AFC champions and all that stuff. But as that game gets closer, it's going to be lots of nerves. And I think I just imagine turning on the Super Bowl and my favorite team is running out onto the field is going to be just absolutely mind blowing for me because it's just nothing like it.
I know, right? Oh man, what a hell of a feeling.
I know. I just hope we come out of there with a win, but we're happy to be here too. I don't want to, underestimate that part. Right.
But like you said, it's just the journey of it. And that's the thing when I think people don't understand, like, as far as this, that's what makes it sweet. Like, think about last year being 4-11-1.
Yep.
This makes that just even more sweeter. Like, you've been through heartbreak, the Carson Wentz, Lord, Carson Palmer, the Carson Palmer injury. I think that first play in that wild card game against Pittsburgh, you've had so many disappointments, and now you're here, and it's like this is what it's worth. This is what this what else it boils down to. When you follow a team, you love a team. This is the moments that you live for.
Yeah, and I think it was the beginning of the season. I don't know if it was before the season started or after one of those. It might have been after the Bears lost in week 2, which was a very ugly loss. Yeah. Zach Taylor at one point was the odds-on favorite to be the first coach fired in the NFL. This year he was, and now he's in the Super Bowl, and people are like, Coach of the Year. Like you said, the journey, the whole ride to get here from watching your team go through. I mean, we lost to the Bears, and then a month later, we're losing to the Jets, and it's like, what is going on with this team? And then you have the exciting win at the end of the season against the Chiefs, and you're like, okay, we can make some noise. And then you win 3 playoff games, and now it's like, whoa, now we're in the Super Bowl. I don't know how we got here, but we're here. And Cincinnati is going crazy and enjoying it, enjoying this ride with the Bengals team.
Yes, indeed. And and like we said, one of the best stories in the NFL this season, hands down. But so we'll put a bow on the Cincinnati Bengals preview. Definitely appreciate you, Taylor, for coming through.
Absolutely.
Social media, any upcoming projects, plug away.
Yes, sir. So I'm on social media, mainly Twitter @_Taylor Cornell. Pretty much predominantly tweeting Bengals stuff. I'll dabble in other conversations, but it's usually Bengals content. I started a Bengals podcast back in April, I believe, because there was a lot of discourse around Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell, and I was like, I could get my thoughts out there. So I started a podcast. It's called the Who Dey Den. So I do usually 1 or 2 episodes a week previewing, and the season's winding down for us. So it's kind of bittersweet, but that's a lot of fun. You can check that out wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in my thoughts on additional thoughts on what the Super Bowl might look like for Cincinnati.
Yes, indeed. And once again, definitely appreciate you, Taylor, for coming on. Definitely looking forward to seeing what you guys do in Super Bowl 56. And,
Absolutely. Who Dey.
yeah, appreciate it. And this wraps up the Cincinnati Bengals preview for Super Bowl 56. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.